The FBI is known to investigate cases involving everything from UFOs, unexplained events, to fraud and missing persons cases. It's expected then that with so many incidents to investigate, there will be a few that include some truly odd details. Number 5. On the 26th of June, 1975, two FBI agents named Jack R. Kohler and Ronald A. Williams traveled to the Pine Ridge Reservation, where they were looking for a man named Jimmy Eagle. They wanted to question him over the recent assault and robbery of two local ranch hands in the area. At around 11:50 a.m., while driving in two separate unmarked cars, Kohler and Williams spotted a red pickup truck matching the description of Jimmy's vehicle. They reported it and followed the truck, but it was later revealed that the occupant of the truck was a man who'd been questioned by Williams the day before. Not long after their initial report, Williams radioed that the truck had come to a stop and that they were under heavy rifle fire. He radioed directions to another agent, Gary Adams, who stated that he was 12 miles from their location, but on his way. But as he approached, Adams was also fired upon, and he was unable to reach his fellow agents. For the next 10 minutes, Williams and Kohler were under heavy fire, with a total of 125 bullets striking their vehicle. It would later be found that only 5 rounds had been fired by the two agents combined. At 4:25 p.m., after the firefight had ended, Williams and Kohler's bodies were located next to Kohler's vehicle. Williams had been hit in his left arm and side, his foot, right hand, and head. Kohler had suffered bullet wounds to the arm and head. Their assailants had then taken apart Williams' car and stolen 4 firearms that belonged to the agents. It was found that they'd been shot at close range with a .223 type bullet, and only one man, Leonard Peltier, owned an AR-15 rifle that matched the ammunition. Peltier would later admit that he was part of the gunfight, but denied ending the agents' lives. On the 10th of September, Peltier's AR-15, along with Kohler's .308, was recovered when a car exploded on a turnpike near Wichita, Kansas. The .223 shell found in the trunk of Kohler's car matched with Peltier's rifle. He was arrested in February of 1976 by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police while in possession of an array of loaded weapons. In April of the next year, he was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. Number 4. On the 7th of April, 1972, 29-year-old Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. was a passenger on Flight 855 from Newark, New Jersey to Los Angeles, California. McCoy was an Army-trained parachutist who enjoyed skydiving as a hobby. He'd served in Vietnam, was a National Guard reservist, and devout Mormon. He enrolled at Birmingham Young University, where he studied law enforcement at a time when airline hijackings were rife, and the infamous D.B. Cooper case had taken place just 5 months earlier. He would go on to write his thesis on airline hijackings, and while doing research, he realized that there were no systems in place to prevent these incidents. He convinced his wife to give him $500, with which he bought a plane ticket, a disguise, and a firearm. He then typed out instructions for the pilots of the plane that he would be traveling on before driving him to Salt Lake International Airport. McCoy boarded Flight 855 and was seated at the back of the plane, but during the flight, he left his seat to go to the bathroom, and when he didn't return, one of the pilots asked him to come out, which he did, wearing his disguise. Passengers reported to the cabin crew that a well-dressed man was standing at the back of the plane, holding a hand grenade. The plane was diverted to Grand Junction Airport, and an off-duty pilot approached McCoy, prompting him to pull out his weapon and hand over the envelope. The notes instructed the pilot to land at San Francisco International Airport, and that while the plane was being refueled, authorities were to deliver $500 in cash along with 4 parachutes. All his demands were met, and after taking off towards the east and climbing 16,000 feet as instructed, McCoy collected his notes, put on a jumpsuit, a helmet, and a parachute, shut off the cabin lights, and jumped from the plane. The following day, McCoy would be on patrol with the National Guard, piloting a helicopter that was searching for the hijacker. But his plan would unravel when his fingerprints were found on the plane, and a witness at a burger stand in the area recognized a picture of McCoy. Upon searching his house, FBI agents found $499,970 in a cardboard box. He had apparently used $30 to buy a milkshake and hamburger at the hamburger stand. He would receive 45 years in prison. Number 3. On the 25th of September, 1937, Charles Sherman Ross, a 72-year-old greeting card manufacturer from Chicago, was driving on North Avenue with his former secretary and good friend, Florence. He noticed that the car behind him had been following him for a while with unusually bright lights. He decided to cut over to the side to let the other car pass, but immediately the other car swerved in front of them and came to a stop, blocking him from driving further. Henry Seidland jumped out of the car in front and approached Ross's car with a gun in his hand. He tried to open the driver's side back door, but it was locked, and while tapping on Ross's window with the pistol, he told him to unlock the door. Ross did as he was told, and Seidland searched him before forcing him into the other car, which was being driven by James Atwood Gray. Seidland explained to Ross that he was being kidnapped and took $85 from Florence's purse before ordering her to lie on the floor of Ross's car and driving off with the victim. The kidnappers then drove to Emily, Minnesota, where they hid in a dugout in the woods. Seidland instructed Ross to write a ransom note for $50,000 and mailed it to Harvey S. Brackett, a former business associate of Ross's, before traveling to Chicago. He would send 3 more ransom notes after that, instructing that a motorcycle rider was to take specific routes over 395 miles to deliver the money. The payoff was arranged, and the motorbike rider set out to the rendezvous point. Upon arriving at Highway 20 at 7:50 p.m., the ransom money was thrown off the side of the road and the bike was ditched 300 yards further as instructed. Seidland retrieved the money and headed back to the hideout. Here, a scuffle ensued when Seidland suspected that Gray might try to kill him in order to steal the money. Gray was shot multiple times during the fight, and Ross was knocked into a ditch where he fell unconscious. Seidland tried to revive him, but couldn't, and he decided to end his life instead. The FBI, however, kept track of the serial numbers on the bills, and when Seidland bought a ticket on a horse race on January 14, 1938, he was taken into custody. He would eventually lead agents to the 2 men's bodies and would be executed on the 14th of July. Number 2. On the 11th of March, 1942, Charles Lovett and James Testerman, who were members of a machine gun troop in Georgia, decided to desert their posts in the U.S. Army. Just after midnight the following night, they went to the room of Sergeant Clifton Hall and assaulted him with an iron bell, causing him to lose consciousness. They then stole .45 caliber Smith & Wesson revolvers and about 100 rounds of ammunition before making their escape. They made it to a nearby highway where they commandeered a taxicab and forced the driver to take them to the fort, where they caught a bus to Knoxville, Tennessee. The FBI was informed of the situation and immediately started to investigate. At 9:35 a.m. on the 13th, agents Hubert Treacy and Charles Tyner were driving to Abington, Virginia when they spotted 2 soldiers who matched the description of the deserters. They followed them to a nearby cafe and approached them while identifying themselves as agents, explaining that they were looking for 2 deserters. Lovett produced his pistol and fired at Tyner, who was struck in the arm and knocked down. In an instant, he turned the gun on Tracy, who was reaching for his weapon. He shot the agent in the face, knocking him down too. Tyner attempted to give chase, but he collapsed when he reached the road. The 2 soldiers then took refuge in the basement of a house on the outskirts of town. The house was soon surrounded by FBI and local police, and after a few canisters of tear gas were thrown into the basement, they emerged with their arms up. Both were found guilty of murder and given life sentences. Number 1. John Johnson had been granted a conditional release from Alcatraz on the 20th of March, 1953, where he spent 9 years after he made a career out of criminal activity. At only 16 years old, he'd been convicted of larceny, and only 3 months later, he would again be arrested for breaking and entering. A year later, he would be put behind bars again for car prowling, and the following year, he would serve time for burglary. A month after his release, he would travel to the Hollywood branch of Citizens National Trust, where he made off with $610 after robbing the bank. After 3 more banks were robbed on the same day, the FBI got involved, and on the 26th of October, 1940, they received information about a nearby department store that had been robbed, resulting in Johnson's apprehension. The method of robbery matched that of the bank robberies, and they found that Johnson had recently made a few extravagant purchases, paying $300 in cash. He was arrested and sentenced to 15 years in prison, during which time he would attempt an escape and be moved to 2 different prisons before ending up in Alcatraz. Upon his release from the island, he soon returned to his old ways again, and he stole a red convertible after strangling its owner. Despite an intense investigation, Johnson remained at large until he made a call to the Los Angeles Mirror reporter, who reported the call to the FBI. The reporter spoke with the FBI agents and arranged another call with Johnson. Johnson agreed, and while the reporter kept him on the line with a lengthy conversation, agents started hunting for him. They learned that he was phoning from a town movie theater in downtown Baltimore. 4 agents made their way there and started looking for Johnson. In the lobby, they saw only one man, Johnson, making a call from a telephone booth. He immediately knew he was in trouble and fired 2 shots, hitting Special Agent J. Brad Murphy in the abdomen. All 4 agents opened fire, hitting Johnson 7 times before he slumped over. He would pass away on arrival at a nearby hospital. Murphy and another wounded agent were also rushed to the hospital where the second agent would recover. Murphy, however, was not so lucky, and upon sensing that he wasn't going to make it, he asked about Johnson. When he was told that he'd been killed, he spoke his last words, "May God have mercy on his soul." Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But I've been Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.